So today is the 27th, and I'm going to solve. Now, example 1 won't factor because of the 8, right? So I'm just going to solve it. I'm going to bring over the 8 plus 8, right? So because it won't factor, I'm just going to solve it. I'm going to go x squared equals 8. And I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So I'll just undo the x squared by taking the square root. But how many answers are there?
2.
2, right? So we will say x is equal to plus or minus, with square roots, plus or minus the square root of 8. Now that's a great answer. I would accept that answer. A better answer, I know that the square root of 8 can be rewritten as the square root of 4 times the square root of 2. Do you remember doing these last year? And the square root of 4 becomes 2. So a better answer would be x is equal to plus or minus 2 square roots of 2. They're the same answer. One is just a better version of it, okay? Remember breaking down square roots? We did that last year, okay? All right. Example 2. All right, let me slide a little bit. Now, the problem with example 2 is it won't factor. I mean, you would think it would be x plus 2, wouldn't you? I mean, I would think so if you factor it. Wouldn't you think so? But if I did this, I'd have a and I'd get a middle term, right? So it won't factor, so let's just try and solve it. So if I bring over the 4, then x squared equals a negative 4, right? But I'm going to square root like I did above, so I'm going to get rid of the square by square rooting it. And I'm going to have 2 answers, right? So it's going to be plus or minus. So I know for sure my answer is going to be x equals plus or minus the square root of negative 4. But you can't take the square root of a negative unless you use I, right? So I could say x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 4 times the square root of negative 1. Now, you don't have to do this step. I'm just showing you where the I comes from. Because we know, we talked earlier that the square root of negative 1 is equal to I, right? Let's put a circle around that, okay? So my answer then would have to be x is equal to plus or minus 2I. Now, that is 2 answers. With the plus or minus, it really is 2 answers. One answer is 2I, and the other answer is a negative 2I, okay? It really is 2 answers. But plus or minus is the easier way to write it. Because if I just say plus or minus 2I, it means both 2I and a negative 2I. How am I doing? This isn't too hard, is it? Right? As long as we know that the square root of negative 1 is I, we're good, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, let's move on. Am I good? I'm not going too fast? Slide it up to example 3. All right, let's solve this one. Well, it doesn't look like it's going to factor, so let me just solve it. I'm bringing the 4 over, okay? I'm going to have an x minus 2 squared equals negative 4. I'm going to get rid of the square, the squared symbol, by undoing it, by doing its opposite. So I'll take the square root of both sides, okay? Now the square will cancel the square root. So the square root and the square dissolve each other, and so I'm just left with an x minus 2 equals plus or minus 2I. And we know it's plus or minus 2I because we just did that up there, right? Right. And now we're going to add 2, plus 2, plus 2. But you can't add real numbers with imaginary numbers. You can't add them, so you have to leave them apart, okay? That's a real number. That's really 2. And that's an imaginary, right? So my answer is going to x equals 2 plus or minus 2I, okay? And that is a great way to write the answer. And I'm going to show it to you differently. It's the same as x equals 2 plus 2I and x equals 2 minus 2I, okay? Because they come in pairs like that. But it's easier just to write the plus or minus, right? I mean, x equals 2 plus or minus I, okay? Thumbs up so far? Is this making a little bit of sense? We're definitely in Algebra 2 now, not Algebra 1. Agree? Okay. Mr. Massey's very happy I'm teaching you this stuff. Okay, you ready to turn the page?
No.
Okay, I'll wait for you. When you take pre-calc next semester or next year, you're going to need to know this. Okay? Okay, flip the page. Okay, all right. All right, example 4. It won't factor. It won't solve, but I gave you a hint. Quadratic formula. Now, we haven't seen that for a long time. Let's write it down. Quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That's the quadratic formula. In fact, that's so important, I'm going to put that on the board too, huh? We put that up on the board. It's one of our important formulas, all right? I'll put that one over here. Okay. Quadratic formula, okay? Negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac, that's b squared, doesn't look like very good, b squared, all over 2a. Okay, now, before I go any further, easy question. X squared, how many answers? X squared, how many answers? 2. And with the plus or minus in the formula, that's how you get your 2 answers. Does that make sense? So, here's what we got. We have a is 1, b is 2, and c is negative 5, okay? All right. Hunter, are you taking notes with us? Of course you are. Thanks, Hunter. So let's plug things in. So I'm going to go negative b, right? Negative b, so I'm going to go negative 2 plus or minus big square root b squared. So I'm going to go 2 squared minus 4. And 4 is in the formula. 4 is always there. 4 is in the formula. Minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 5, all over 2. 2 is always there. It's part of the formula. 2 times a, which a is 1. Okay? So all you do for the quadratic formula is just put them in. Just put the numbers where they belong. That's what you do. Now let's simplify it. Go negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 plus 20 all over 2. How am I doing? So then I'm going to go negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 24 all over 2. So all it is just add, subtract, multiply, divide. That's all it is. Now, square root of 25, do a little side work on up here. A little square root of 24 is the same thing as the square root of 4 times square root of 6, right? And I like to break down my square roots into something that has a perfect square. So I'm picking a set of numbers, a pair of numbers where one of them has a square root. That's how I do it. So that becomes 2 square roots of 6. Okay, now let me take that, 2 square roots of 6, and we'll put it right there, okay? Because it's the same thing, it's just broken down. So let me rewrite this now as negative 2 plus or minus 2 square roots of 6 all over 2. Let me do it the long way. So this is the same thing as, you ready? Negative 2 divided by 2 plus or minus 2 divided by 2 square roots of 6. You don't have to do this. If you see the reducing, then you don't have to do this, but I'm showing the reducing. Negative 1 plus or minus 1 square root of 6. And there are 2 answers there. There are 2 answers. If you want to write it as a x equals negative 1 plus the square root of 6 and x equals negative 1 minus the square root of 6, there are definitely 2 answers there, okay? Probably haven't seen the quadratic formula for a while, have you? Okay. You know, in many European countries, they don't teach factoring. Everything's done by the quadratic formula. Everything's done. Every problem's done by the quadratic formula, though. So if you can factor it easily in your head, why would you want to do the quadratic formula, right? We Americans think, hey, if it's easy, just factor, right? And then if it isn't easy, then you got the formula, right? Yeah, I've had some kids from other countries going, what are you doing? I'm factoring. Well, we just use the formula. I go, oh, you're doing it the hard way. Okay, number 5. we need 3 answers, right? We need 3 answers, okay? Oh, I forgot to say set that equal to 0. Sorry, you guys. Okay. Now, if you need 3 answers, let me do this first. The very first way you'd think about doing it, okay? The very first way you'd think about doing it is probably bringing over the 8, right? You guys agree with that? You have x cubed equals negative 8. And then what would you do next? Cube root it, right? Wouldn't you cube root it? And what's the cube root of negative 8? Cube root of negative 8, what times what times what?
2.
Almost. Negative 2.
Negative.
Right, you agree? Emma, you agree? Because you got negative times negative, it's positive times another negative. So one answer is x equals negative 2. Now we got a problem. We need 3 answers. I only have 2 answers, but I need 2 more, okay? So let's do this differently, okay? So first, I got a hint. Let's factor this, okay? So what we can do is call this an x cubed plus a 2 cubed. You all right with that? And I'm going to factor it using this formula right here. Because I need 2 more answers, okay? So, I'm going to let a equal x and b equal 2. And I'm going to use my formula. So my formula is going to go, okay, I'm going to go an x plus 2 times an x squared minus 2x plus 4, right? Equals 0. All right? How am I doing? So I already have the one answer. X equals negative 2. Boom, there it is anyway, right? You guys agree? See the negative 2? Boom. Now what about this? What about this? 2 answers, right? It doesn't factor. What do you have to do if it doesn't factor? You have to use the quadratic formula. If it does not factor, you have to use the quadratic formula. Okay, so I'll slide back down. Let's do that. So A is 1, B is negative 2, and C is 4, right? Almost done, aren't we? So let's use our quadratic formula. So I've got my negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, okay? That's my formula. I just wrote it down again. And let's find the other 2 answers, okay? So negative b. So we're going to go negative, negative. I'm going to go with negative, negative. Negative b. So I'm going to go with negative 2. I got a negative, negative. So I'm going to have a negative, negative 2 plus or minus square root of b squared. So I'm going to go with negative 2 squared minus 4, because that's in the formula, times a, which is 1, times c, which is 4, all over 2a, all over 2 times 1. Okay, how am I doing? So with the quadratic formula, all you need to do is just put the numbers where they belong. Put the a in for the a and the b, negative 2, and the c is 4. Okay, now let's simplify this. Double negative, right? Negative, negative. It's a positive 2 plus or minus square root. Negative 2 squared. Negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4 minus 16 over 2. Okay? Am I going too fast?
No.
Okay. So then I'm going to have a 2 plus or minus the square root of a negative 12 over 2. I think we're going to have an I answer. I think we're going to, why do I think we're going to have an I answer? Totally right. So little side work, okay. Square root of negative 12, little side work is the same thing as square root of 4, square root of 3, square root of negative 1, right? Little side work, which is going to be 2 square roots of 3i. So, grand answer. Almost 2 plus or minus 2 square roots of 3i over 2. And we'll reduce the 2's and we'll make the answer 1 plus or minus the square root of 3i. We wound up with 3 answers after all, didn't we? We've got one answer of negative 2 and we have 2 other answers here, okay? Alright, so let me stop the recording and let's load up our computer. Would you like my help today a little bit?
Just go to the bathroom.